Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Reasonable Contractor Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Templin, here with a new friend that we're going to learn about together from the area, Prior Lake, right?
Yep.
Tim?
Credit River, yep. Prior Lake
All that?
address, closer to Lakeville. Kids go to Lakeville schools, yep.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's a cool area. I'm down here in Savage, so I mean, I'll just pass it over to you right away and ask you the question. How'd you get started in the electrical field?
Well, I got started, I went to trade school in 2005 at Minneapolis Community Technical College. Um, I wanted to, I was doing all kinds of remodeling and all kinds of stuff like my whole life before that, roof, siding, concrete, like interior stuff and all that for the longest time. And then I just decided that, that was like living day to day basically at that point. I thought I'd go to school for something that might pay off one day, and
Sure.
so I started that 2 year program. And
Did you have at that time? Because it sounds like we were almost on the same timeline. When I went into electrical, the electrical bench was full. Like, so I had to get on a waiting list. I remember in 2000, God, I was 24. So, I mean, yeah, right around there, 2004, 2005, I had to get on a year-long waiting list to get into Anoka Tech at the time. And then when we got out of the 2 year program, the bench was actually full. When they came to do job placement for the school, they were like, yeah, there's 600 guys sitting on the bench. And I came to the thing ready to kind of drill the guy and get good questions. And they didn't have good ones for me for that aspect, which is why I went the industrial route. I took a job at the cheese plant down in Lesueur. Did
sure.
you see something similar at the time?
Well, actually, it was '06 to '08 was my 4 semesters. And so I
Okay.
graduated in '08, and that was just like when stuff was crashing. I worked for some non union contractors after that because everybody was going, oh, yeah, they were trying to get you signed up with the 292 and the
Dude,
110 and all
same.
that
Yes.
stuff. And I was like, I always do the opposite of what the herd does, my
Good
whole
man.
life, it seems.
Good
It's
man.
to my detriment sometimes, but, just bullheaded like that. And so I tried some other non-union shops and this and that and apprenticed and got some hours or whatever. But then I finally, uh, in 2010, uh, I organized into the IBEW Local 110 in St. Paul. It just worked out to where I was getting laid off on a Friday, and that uh, organizer at the 110 happened to he knew my dad. My dad was in the 110 as well for his whole career. And he kept trying to talk to me for a couple of years there, and he was talking about, yeah, I would start you at like $14 an hour first year apprentice and this and that. I said, dude, I make like 25 right now. you know
Crazy, bro. Even then,
so
that was crazy.
but it just worked out, and then I ended up organizing in as a third year. I think it started at 20 something, or whatever, and 20 in benefits an hour or whatever. So it worked out. They said you're just going to do the 4 year apprenticeship though, year
After you'd
two,
already done 2 years.
2 through 5. Yes.
Got it.
2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you turn out as a journeyman when you pass your test and stuff. So
So you're full union certified, top to bottom, like
yeah,
the whole
I'm a
Minnesota
110
system.
member still.
Got it. And how
Yep.
do those numbers work? I've never known that. I've heard of the union numbers get thrown around. I have a guy that's coming on from the sheet metal union, and he's got a number, and he says it like to me like I should know what the number means. So maybe I should learn what these numbers mean as I talk
Well,
to more of you guys.
oh, like the 110 and the 292 and all
Yeah, yeah,
that,
yeah.
or them numbers.
Yes.
I don't know where they come up. I know St. Louis was the very first local there was, and their local union number 1 in the IBEW.
That's kind of cool.
So
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm
It's
from the
probably
first.
in the timeline that they came about, I'm sure.
Cool. So now you had your apprenticeship. You did a 5 year apprenticeship. Did you work long as a journeyman? What was that transition to master like? How did that journey look?
Well, I became a journeyman, uh, and then there is a timeline that you can abide by or whatever. But I wasn't in any hurry. I was making a decent wage and whatever, went through the apprenticeship, so now, of course, somewhere in there, you legally lose some of your hours because maybe a contractor wouldn't submit your hours to the state for you or even sign something so that you can, just a big mess sometimes, and no big deal. Some guys, have all their eggs in one basket, and that really matters because getting the ticket is the biggest like goal or whatever, and that just wasn't like, sure, that's what we're working toward and whatever, but it wasn't like, so when I became a journeyman, I worked for a few different. I apprenticed first. I apprenticed for Collins Electric for almost 3 years, and that was because it was 2010 to 11 when the rebuild was coming. Everything was on the uptick and everything. So uh, but in that 09, 10
Terrifying
period,
times.
they weren't transferring apprentices after each 9 months or a year to another shop. So I ended up staying at that. But then they started doing it again. And then I ended up going to Hunt, doing all kinds of commercial, industrial, and residential. And when I say residential, I'm talking about 205 unit apartment buildings that they're putting to the sky, So done tons of those.
Yeah.
Industrial, 3M contracts, Cottage Grove.
3M doesn't play around. Those jobs are inspected hard.
Oh yeah, they're pretty crazy. So then I was a journeyman for, I turned out at Preferred Electric. They did a lot of work. A buddy of mine in trade school back at MCTC, his brother actually owned that shop. He bought it from another shop, Commercial Electric it was at the time. Turned it into Preferred Electric, and he's a service disabled veteran. So he got in good with the VA. So they do a lot of work with the VA in St. Cloud, Minneapolis. They do a ton of U of M work and all
Good
that.
for him. Do I still got you there, Tim?
Electric, and then they were having some growing. That's when they were first really coming up on the scene and stuff, and they were having some growing pains. They had some clown people working there and estimator project managers and stuff that I wanted to go back to Collins really bad, and I knew the manpower. She's works for Nika now, but she always said, your transition while you were with us as an apprentice was amazing. Stay in touch when I left there. So I called her, and she kind of worked it out to where, hey, I'm putting in a call for whatever. And I got, it was a walkthrough. I left one day from Preferred, and I think the next day I was back at Collins. And then I worked there for 7 years as a journeyman. And then I was like, in 22, I was so tired of getting up at 4:30 in the morning and hauling ass into the city to work for the man, put up one apartment buildings, and
we're
so I was like,
spirits, sir. Kindred spirits.
I'm gonna get a master license, and I'm gonna get a contractor license, and I'm gonna start figuring this out because if I work this hard for someone else, I should be able to, why not? So that's what I did.
I think it's a natural thing for sure.
That's what I did. I asked for a layoff, and the current manpower guy, who we were always good and stuff, he said, "Yeah, absolutely. Hope you figure it out. Whatever you want to do." And so, while I was on unenjoyment, I set up a business. got my master license, got a contractor license, did all the stuff that entails. So for the last 3 years, I've been really learning a lot of stuff that I had no idea about. And sometimes I'm one stressful week away from going back and working for the big guys, just show up for $100 an hour. Just show up.
I do know.
Yeah. So
as a guy who, no doubt, buddy, I hear you for sure. Like, you walk away from something solid, something good, and you're like, for all the right reasons. I feel like, at least, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but usually it's about freedom or impact, in my experience, right? Like you were saying, you're getting up 4:30, busting ass for somebody else. Why shouldn't I just do this for myself? And then you jump off that cliff and you go, and then there's all the metaphors that people use, but like jumping off a cliff and making the plane on your way down, like when you're like, I've learned so much,
and all the
what paperwork now, who you need a signature from where,
all the regulation.
Do you need my firstborn?
Yes.
That's funny, man. So then let's talk about your business now. One thing I was interested in on your website, I gotta ask, because I'm an Elon fan and Tesla. I look at a lot of websites for contractors doing what I'm doing right now, and you're the first one I've seen that advertises your renewable energy. So, do you do a lot of those Tesla house units? What kind of?
We don't get all that as much as I would have liked to, or whatever. It just hasn't happened. There's a lot of private equity coming in, buying small shops and stuff. So they got all
specializing, or
right. So they're kind of in that, you got to kind of like get your foot in all that stuff, and I just haven't seen that yet. So I do some car chargers and stuff and whatever, but I just nothing big. Nothing big has happened, came of it. I'm a span installer too. Span panels are similar. You can hook them up to all this different stuff and have all kinds of different stuff, applications that can take place, and you can run everything off your phone and your whole premises and all this stuff. I got certified to do that, and haven't, really. You never have time to really stop what you're doing, the stuff that pays the bills so far, to invest all your time in this thing. And when you're by yourself and not a team, I hired I was by myself, a guy in a service van running around for the last 3 years. And then this summer, last winter was real slow. The height of this season seemed like a bunch of catch up the whole time. And then I just had spine surgery like a month ago. So that kind of put a damper on things. But during the height of the season this year, in the summer, I hired an apprentice, and then I started really learning some more things, like all this stuff that's all of a sudden you're inviting every government entity in the land into your business now, like
just
where you
because
didn't
you
have
hired an apprentice,
right? Just for like payroll extortion and all this
stuff you got to learn on the fly. Yeah,
right. For every $100 I pay a guy, I gotta give the man $10. It's like every time you fill your gas tank, you gotta give them $15 or 20 or whatever, that kind of stuff. And I was like, there's always going to be that, obviously. But I really started learning all this stuff, all this little, work comp insurance. Then they hang on to you and try to say, you have to have it. We're not, you can't like drop us, and all this. And I'm like, because when I ended up not having that apprentice anymore, because he turned out not to work out anyway, you can't be like coming out of the customer's home and blatantly saying, I got to get to the dispo. The dispensary. Like, dude, I'm pretty sure he's bogging weed oils on my jobs, Dude, I can't have that.
Was it a younger guy?
Yeah, he's like, 28 or whatever.
Okay. I was going to ask, when you brought up the apprentice part, I was going to ask, how did that kind of change your day-to-day flow? Did you have to spend a lot of time teaching? Did that slow down business productivity?
Yeah, he was real good on brand new stuff. But when it came to like remodels, which we do a lot of and stuff, he should have been the one in the attic, he should have been the, why am I cleaning off your, fingerprints over a brand new painted ceiling where you
Faceplate
hung
or
up a
something like that.
fan? What, like, and I tell you that 3 times on 3 different jobs and you just mumble something and it doesn't correct, that kind of stuff, whatever.
Yeah. And that's
Finding a good guy was my biggest thing. I would hire a journeyman right now and put him in my van if I could find one.
is that what
Everybody
it
that's
is? You
yeah,
can't find one?
everybody that's good has a job.
Fair.
That's the way it is.
Is that probably the biggest challenge for you right now then? So you did 3 years busting ass. You're doing it all yourself. Obviously, you know what you're doing. You're doing a good job. Did you build through word of mouth? Was your website a hit? How did you build those first
A
3
lot
years
of
where you
that. I
got
get a lot of calls from Google. I mean, I've gotten work off of Yelp. People calling me through Yelp and Google, and a lot of people around here. A lot of word of mouth. That Chris that I was telling you about, I went to trade school. He's all of a sudden the last couple of weeks been throwing me stuff because now Preferred sold themselves to Horwitz. So now it's Preferred Electric, a Horwitz company, and Chris was one of the high up guys because his brothers owned the shop, and he like oversaw all the stuff at the VAs and stuff, and now he's kind of breaking away from there and getting into his own contracting thing with a bunch of VA work. Well, people are still calling him for all this stuff now. He's starting to like throw all this stuff at me, so that who knows where that'll go.
it's a good place. I mean, it's a good problem to have. I'd rather have that coming than, begging for business.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be nice to have some good, and it sounds like there's going to be some decent stuff through the winter this time, so that's good.
Where do you get that indication? That's great. I believe you and I hope it to be
Um,
true. What tells you that?
just from collaborating with, I'm not saying for everybody because I'm in Facebook groups and stuff with other small
Yeah, we're just talking
contractors
about you, man. Let's talk about your channel.
to large contractors and stuff, and um, the stuff that people are calling me about right now is a lot of it's good winter work. Let's just say that.
Awesome, dude.
A
That's
lot of
so
it's good
cool to
stuff
hear.
to be doing in the winter. So I'm
I love to
following
hear
up
that
on all that.
as a business owner, as an aspiring entrepreneur like yourself, to hear that you had a rough winter, you made it through, you had a busy season where you tried to fix the volume problem by bringing somebody on, doesn't shake out, and here you are ready to have a good winter. It just goes to show like how keeping it to the grindstone and doing all the right things. Things
Sure.
break your way sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So then, are you going to continue, do you think, with your anticipated work and your first experience with an apprentice? What's your plan going forward to handle that volume issue for your business? Are you kind of at that tipping point where it's like you said, you would hire a journeyman right now and it's just a matter of finding somebody?
Yeah, pretty much because the one thing when I went out on my own about the IBEW local that I'm a member of, I've continued to pay my dues as an individual, and they had me in for the talk the day I got my contractor's license. Like they got nothing better to do. Sit on their computers and look at the state website and stuff. But they had me in for the talk. I thought they were going to say, hey, sign right here, right now, otherwise kick rocks and leave everything vested on the table. But it wasn't like that. They said, no, that doesn't work anymore. That used to work and stuff. The gist of it came down to basically get yourself going. And it came down to what I interpreted from them as when you start bidding in our pools, then you might have to make a decision.
Which
So
is fair, right? I mean,
right.
they brought you up. It's cool that they give the flexibility because I would have assumed when you said they were going to have the talk, that's the thing I was assuming was going to happen right away.
Yep.
The fact that they're giving those guys flexibility, but then drawing a boundary. Like, hey, we brought you up. Don't be over here snagging our jobs, sir. You know what I mean?
Right. And the whole point of saying that was to say that if I signed with them, of course, right off the bat, you're on the hook for a journeyman for like $3,500 a week. you know.
Man, that's a
So
lot.
that's kind of, you got to have the stuff to sustain that in place. And I dabbled in working on that too, and who knows, it just, everything, it's kind of fluid. Everything that happens keeps happening. I'm not attached. I'm wearing it like a loose garment, paying the
Smart.
bills,
Smart.
being able, and all that stuff without trying to, get sunk too, and whatever,
You brought up a
but yeah,
similar idea when you were talking about getting your apprenticeship, right? Like some guys have their eggs in all one basket, and I didn't want to interrupt you,
yeah,
but that's what I did. When I went down to the cheese plant, they told me, because it was Davisco Foods, and they have the Cambria plant down there, just down the 169 from the cheese
yep,
plant. They said to me, they're like, Ryan, come on, because my big thing is I wanted apprentice hours out of school, even though I wasn't going union. They're like, well, we got a master over at Cambria that'll sign off on your hours. 3 years into automation technician, I go to check in on my hours. I'm like, hey, I could probably take that test in 10 months. They're like, oh, yeah, that guy left. What do you mean? Yeah, no, we got nothing for you. SOL,
the
3 years of hours for the apprenticeship.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
all
the
the
whole
eggs in one
thing.
basket.
Yes, the whole thing. The whole reason I brought that story up with the local union there was that if I wanted to even hire a journeyman and sign on with them right now out of that pool, they're well trained, and it's a lot. You're not guessing. To some extent, you're guessing what you're going to get, and you can spin them too. Whatever, and keep. There's like 15 guys on the bench out of 2,500 guys in that local.
Wow. So they're keeping it moving.
And when the numbers like that, those are people that don't want to work. They're picking and choosing. They don't like growing pains either. They like to get a nice little data center job where they can be on that job, same place, be
Sure.
say, be in that place, same place every day, same time, same hours, overtime if possible, and all that stuff for 2-3 years. You know,
Absolutely.
I could
It's
never go to
interesting.
the same. I could never do the same thing for 2-3 months
That's it.
anymore.
Sure. Um, and that's just because you like the variety.
Yeah, I like to be moving.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, I've been stuck on jobs for a year,
A-
or something.
Absolutely.
But there's nothing worse than sitting and just trimming out, receptacles, lights, devices, and stuff for 6 months. There's nothing
Same
worse.
two plate screws.
Right. It's terrible.
uh, that's super funny, man. So then, just touching up on the business piece, you said the challenge right now is kind of figuring out the volume. You talked about how you get business right now, and then what's your plan? Like, do you have goals set for this next year? Or?
There's a lot of things like in the back of my mind, I mean, like one of them was that I know a lot of inspectors now, electrical inspectors and stuff. Some of them become my buddies and stuff and whatever. Some of them always were. Some of them I worked with back at Collins and stuff. Um,
Such a good network.
yeah. There's one in particular that has 3 municipalities where the state hasn't honed in on that. Like some cities, say Bloomington, they have their own, the city of Bloomington. It's not state electrical inspector, it's the city has their electrical inspectors. And there's some cities that are still like that. Woodbury, um, there's a handful of them that are holdouts on that. But then there's also cities that contract out to an inspector. So an inspector might have 3 cities or something
Ah,
on his deal that he contracts with them.
good for him. Sick gig.
And so I've been talking to him, and I'm like, well, is that going state too? These 3 cities? And he's like, yeah, no, some of them like to not have that come in down on them, like the state, like moving in and taking, Guidoing their way into everybody, and whatever.
That's a
So
funny term.
he
You're
says
saying the
he's gonna,
cities don't want that. The
he
cities keep
says
the
he,
state out.
yeah, he says he's gonna retire in the next like 20 months or something. I said, who's going to be your replacement? He's like, I don't know. You want it to be you? I go, I don't know. Is it lucrative? He said, when they put up hospitals and stuff, we get charged by, that permit fee is by breaker. he said it can be lucrative.
Oh man!
Of course, you're running around looking at a kitchen or something at someone's house, but there's bigger stuff. And bigger stuff is big commercial jobs have big permit fees, And so that's one thing, couple of there's teaching jobs out there and stuff at some of the trade schools that are looking for instructors, just different stuff. I don't,
Just got stuff on the burners. That's kind of been your story this whole time we've been talking. School,
yes,
keeping the electric, like to have your options doing.
Yeah. So as far as the business itself, we'll see.
And I mean, like, it's kind of, I think, similar to kind of how all these things are. It's something that you've kept going. Your network story, man, the people that you've talked about, how you've kept your network through that journeyman process and everything, and how that comes full circle later. I mean, getting work from it now, it's like, oh, dude.
Yeah,
obviously your strategy's working. You know what I mean? Keeping things burning and seeing what's cooking hot.
Yeah, and I could get slammed in the next month. Yes. I could get slammed to where I'm out till April, May, June on stuff. And then I won't have time to think about all that other stuff swirling around
down in the fire, making it happen.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it always is. If there's a lull and I start getting slow, I start thinking about other stuff and doing it.
Start putting something else on this burner. Let's get something else cooking here just to make sure.
Take care of stuff at home that's been neglected during the height of the season.
Yes. And absolutely.
The best thing about my thing is, since I went out, I think, is getting to walk my kid to the bus in the morning.
Singing to my heart, sir.
Getting to see him come home from school, getting to do that, not being gone at 5 a.m, every day for the last 3 years. I mean, that kind of stuff. My other kids, football, Lakeville South football. It's awesome to get to be present for that stuff. When
people ask me about that business piece and we talk about going out on your own and how much more work it is, that's been my reason from the beginning, dude, for that exact thing you're talking about. Getting the kids home from the bus, getting them on the bus, and it doesn't need to be all day. Just that time there and that time after, it's incredible, dude. So I'm glad to hear that from you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a good transition to the final question I usually drop for everybody is, and you talked about being a teacher too. So I guess you've got really good perspective on this. And you've talked about how hard it is to find an apprentice worth of shit. So what do you give to the next generation for advice on getting in the trades or insight into how to do it, why they should do it? Something along those lines. What are your thoughts there?
I would never be attached, knowing what I know now, I would never be attached to the end result. My job isn't I'm signing a blank check, wind up where we wind up. Of course, we have to cooperate in our, in things as they come about, but not to have all my eggs in one basket. I had no clue, where anything would end up ever. My biggest thing was when I was in trade school, I thought, I had the first electrician I ever worked for. I worked for through trade school in the summers and everything. And then, I'm helping them with different jobs and stuff. And I thought that was going to be my, that's all I needed. I needed to get to one guy in a van. I need a cool van like he has, and I need to be running around like somebody, and all that. And I mean, a decade later, I so far surpassed that minimal thing, which now I'm finding out what that thing really is, and that sucks,
Yes.
But
new peak, the new
not mountain. To be attached to the final outcomes because there's a lot of different things that can end up. There's all kinds of specialties. There's all kinds of little stuff you can end up. So to never settle and stop for some little comfort zone, I
Hey,
think would
there's
be
a good one.
my little comfort zone. Keep getting educated. There's all kinds of things down at the hall that you can take. You could end up being in instrumentation for a plant or something, walk around with a screwdriver and a meter.
That was what we, dude. That was what we did. I had a nice little like the little two-piece belt that had like 4 tools in it. I had 2 screwdrivers, my meter, and like the specialty screwdrivers, dude. Oh, you're not kidding. There's a ton of options, and there's a million ways by keeping your
Right.
options open, dude. But
Yes.
staying out of your comfort zone is
Yep.
that's gold, dude. That is gold. Well, Tim, that's all I got. I mean, I appreciate you coming on. These stories were amazing, dude. To hear your journey, you did it through the '08 crisis and started your own business. This was
And this
awesome,
one
dude.
that's coming now,
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
that's here.
there, like you said, it's just the next mountain, right? The next discomfort zone.
Yeah.
It's whatever
Got
it
to
is. We're gonna figure it out. we're
got to
gonna
be
put a
able
head
to
down.
you got to be able to adapt a little bit.
Yes.
Whatever happens, you got to be able to pivot and turn, not be anchored to something that
Well said.
might be falling.
It's easy to see why you're at where you're at, sir. This has been great. I appreciate your time so much, and I think we'll talk again soon.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. It's been great, Ryan.
All right, buddy. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Thanks.
Yep. Bye.
Bye bye.